Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another social emotional workshop. Today, we're going to be talking about suicide prevention, and we are with the organization No Resolve. And we're going to be, sharing information about this, but we're going to take a different approach to it today. Today, we are going to talk about Today, our guest speaker, Dennis from No Resolve, is going to share his experience and his stories. And he's going to share how he used the arts and specifically music to help him through his depression and his grief. So, Dennis, we're so glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me. Um, okay, so um, my name is Dennis. I'm the founder of a local nonprofit organization called No Resolve, and we are dedicated to promoting mental health and preventing suicide, which is a very personal mission for me. I was 14 years old when I lost my father to suicide, and my last words to him were in anger. We were in the middle of a fight. And like many dads and teenagers do, and I got really upset. We got back to his house. I called my mom. I asked her to come and pick me up because I didn't want to spend the rest of the weekend with him. My parents had been divorced for 5 or 6 years, I think, at that point. So I called my mom and I said, I want you to come pick me up. I don't want to spend the rest of the weekend with dad. We kept fighting. We kept arguing. She pulled into the driveway, and I ran out the door, and I screamed, "I hate you, and I never want to see you again." And unfortunately, that was the last thing that I ever said to him. Over the next couple of months, he tried to call. I didn't answer the calls. I didn't listen to the messages. I didn't call him back. He sent letters in the mail that I never opened. I was mad. I was 14. Um, I don't know. I wanted to be right. Um, in any case, it never crossed my mind that I'd never see him again. But we got the call one night that he was missing. It was my stepmom that called the house. And she was real worried. She said he was acting real strange when she left. My mom didn't know what to think. She took my brother and I over to our grandma's house, and all I could think about now was how sorry I was that I said that to him, and just wishing and hoping and praying that he would come home safe so that everything would go back to normal. I woke up the next morning, my brother and I, and we went into the kitchen, and you could feel it in the air. Something was wrong. And that's when my mom and grandma told us that the police had found our father early that morning, that there had been an accident and that he was gone. Uh, that's the moment. That is the moment that the world turned dark to me. Um, in that instant, I felt like childhood was over, right? Anything good was over. And then when we found out a few days later that it was suicide, I thought that was my fault. I blamed myself because of what I said, because I refused to see him. And I don't remember a whole lot else from that time. It was like it was like being outside your own body and just kind of watching this stuff happen. There was a funeral. I was there. It didn't feel like it. I felt like I was just watching it from afar. Everything felt like it was off in the distance, like I was watching it on a screen or something. I just felt completely disconnected from myself, from everyone else, from life. And I wanted to pretend that it never happened. And I did my best. My mom got remarried. We moved, sold the house that we had grown up in. We left everything behind. My stepdad adopted my brother and I. We took on his name. We took on a new life in a new place in a new school, and left it all behind. Tried to, anyways. But I always felt weird. I always felt awkward, and that feeling like I was just kind of observing and watching from the outside, looking in, never really went away. I hid behind humor. I was the class clown. I did very, very poorly in school. And it was strange. The world felt strange to me. And I didn't know what to do with that. But I knew that I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. I did not want to be seen as a victim. I did not want to be seen as different. And although I talked about what had happened with some of my closest friends, I didn't want to dwell on it. I didn't want to focus on it. I wanted to feel like everyone else, whatever that means. But I had a real hard time throughout high school. I remember that the one thing that got me through all of it was music. I had bought a cheap used guitar, and I started teaching myself how to play. I learned how to read tab. And I just started messing around. Me and my buddy Paul, we would get together at each other's houses after school, and we would just play guitar for hours. And that was the one thing that felt okay and normal in my head and in life was music. Moving on through high school, things just got harder. Feelings got more complicated. Your responsibilities start increasing. I didn't want to grow up. It's weird because when a parent dies at a young age like that, you grow up overnight and stop growing up at the same time. And that was me. I was a perpetual adolescent, and that's how I felt. I started seeing everybody else move on with their lives, getting jobs, getting married, having kids, and none of that felt like it was right for me. I was in party mode, and I did a lot of that to mask what I was feeling, because to me, it felt better to be numb than to be in pain all the time. I felt pretty heavily into drugs and alcohol for that reason. And the problem with that for everybody is that you can't numb the bad without numbing the good too. It all dies. And that's how I felt inside. I was in my mid-20s at this point, and I was really starting to think about suicide now because I felt dead on the inside, and I felt like there was no point to any of this. What's the point? I couldn't see the point. I didn't have any hope for myself, for the future. And that was around the time that my first turning point hit. I had been playing guitar for years and writing songs, but nothing really, there wasn't anything real formal about the process. I didn't have any goals or anything like that. It was just something I did for fun and to mess around. But a buddy of mine had a band at the time, and they were a real big inspiration for me. I loved their music. I loved their songs. Their shows were awesome, just this place where everybody felt like they belonged, this community. And so it was their band that inspired me to start taking writing a little more seriously. And I wrote at that time a song called No Resolve, which was about my father and his suicide and everything, all of the feelings that I was keeping bottled up inside. because of that. And writing this song was a huge turning point for me, and I'd like to share it with you now. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep drinking water because it's real dry in here with the heat blasting, and these things always make me nervous, and when I'm nervous I get thirsty. So this is how you leave me, bleeding where I stand. I've tried so hard to figure out, I've tried to understand what could have been so hopeless and so painful that you felt it had to end. What was that final puzzle piece you couldn't get to fit? Did you take a minute to stop and think how we would deal with it? There'll be no answers to these questions. Got to carry on and try to live. So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song. Was there something that I could have done that might have changed your mind? If I told you I loved you and I need you here, would you still be alive? And though I know it's not my fault, I still carry all this guilt and shame inside. So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song. To this song there is no ending, for this pain there's no resolve. Time won't cover up the wounds when you lose someone you love. If I could ask you one last thing, I guess that I would ask you why. I'd ask you why. So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song. I hope that you can hear this song. I hope that you can hear this song. Still so strange to do that in front of a screen instead of, in an auditorium or something where you can feel the energy afterwards. So like I said, writing that song was it was a game changer for me because it was my first time confronting the actual feelings behind the loss instead of trying to run from it. And everybody will tell you the same thing at some point on their journey, Running, it only works temporarily. At some point, you got to confront the demons. And and that was my first go at it. That was my first kind of admission, like, wow, this hurt. Um, this was devastating. I miss him. I'm angry. I'm lost. All of those complicated things. Instead of running away from it, I faced it head on, and it felt good. It felt good, so I kept writing, and started a band, started playing shows, and that was the next 10 years of my life. You know, there was nothing that happened with us. We were like thousands of other bands out there, just doing it for fun and for music. We were never a thing, but we were a thing in our own little world and to each other. And that's really what it was about. Because not only was I confronting these things now, finally, um, I was also starting to feel things that I thought I would never feel again, like purpose and connection and community, and through all of that, hope, like a reason to look forward. And that had been missing for so long. I struggled. I still struggled for years. I still struggle today. This is a lifelong journey. Um, and if I can go back to some of the lyrics in the song, like you hear all the time, time heals all wounds. Well, yes and no. You know, time helps the pain feel less intense if you're dealing with what you're feeling. But you will carry that scar for the rest of your life. You learn how to carry it and you learn how to process that grief, but you'll always miss that person. You don't get over this. But you got to confront, you've got to go through it. You've got to go through it. And that's with any hard, difficult, traumatic thing in life. And so that was the lesson that I was starting to learn back then, and frankly still the lesson that I'm learning today. But funny enough, that song also forced my entire family to confront what had happened, because for 10 years nobody spoke his name. Everybody pretended that this didn't happen. Everybody just kind of, the pictures of him disappeared from homes and hallways, and we didn't talk about this man. We did not celebrate this man's life because of the way he died, and that bothered me. And this song forced me and the whole family to confront what had happened. And let me tell you, it was not comfortable. Because we all deal with this in our own ways, right? But we were talking about him again, you know, and that felt good. And dealing with some of that stuff that comes with a suicide loss, this shame that people who are left behind feel, and this guilt and this anger, and it's unlike losing someone any other way. I'm not minimizing any other loss, but I'm telling you that suicide is an entirely different animal. And so I started doing some work myself, seeking therapy, finding a support group. Actually, that support group found me. There's a support group that we now run at No Resolve here called Survivors of Suicide, and it's for people who've lost loved ones to suicide. The lady who started that program had reached out to me because she'd heard the song, and she wanted me to come in and perform it in front of their group. And I did, and it was a very difficult thing to do, because everyone in that room had lost someone the same way I lost my dad. But for that same reason, it was this beautiful, cathartic thing. these people got it. These people knew, they understood what it was like. They attached to every single word in that song. And so I kept going to group, and I got into therapy, um, and I started dealing with that trauma. Um, but anyways, that group is the reason that I do the work I do today. I was inspired by that because when something like this happens, you really do feel alone. Not just in the world, but even within your own family, because everybody's dealing with it in a different way. Um, and it's a huge problem. It's not getting any better. Um, so I wanted to do something. That's me. That's who I am. I'm a fighter. I always have been, and the problem of suicide, it it made me angry, and I wanted to do something about it. So I started the organization, and since 2007, have been telling this story and playing that song and talking about this. Just making it okay to talk about has to be the first step, I think, because you know, I'll relate it to the song. Writing that song gave me a voice and a space to confront and um, and address some of these complicated things that I was feeling. So I believe that the first step has to be making this okay to talk about. And I hid my own, excuse me, I hid my own suicidal thoughts for a long time. I, they scared me. How could I be feeling this way if I was so angry about how my dad left the world? But you know, it's in my DNA, and I would come to find out through this group and through therapy that um, I've learned this. I've learned this as a possible way out now. I've been shown that this is an option, and so I have that card. And my friend, my mentor, Jean, the lady who started that group, she told me one day, I'll never forget this. She said, Dennis, you will always have that card. It will always be in your pocket. Someday, you will realize that you don't have to play it. And that really struck a chord with me. Like, I felt ashamed to have suicidal thoughts. And what she said to me normalized it. It's okay that you're having these thoughts. There's no shame in that. You will learn someday. You will get strong enough to know that you don't have to act on them. And that is what the work is about. For me, the most important things in that work are, number one, always and forever, music. This is where I put everything that hurts, everything that I can't understand, everything that I can't express in words or in real life conversations. Second is therapy and journaling. And third is art, expressive art. And I encourage everyone to take a look into that term, expressive art. The word itself, art, can scare a lot of people off because you might think, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. Well, I challenge you to discover otherwise, because we're all born creative. We're all born artists. Look at any little kid. The world has a way of crushing that, right? In the interest of getting ahead and being successful and keeping up with the Joneses or whatever else society and the television tells us is important. But there's something about the creative process that everybody can use to process grief and emotions and trauma and loss. And that's because our souls speak in images, not words. And expressive art, the act of creating anything with your hands, whether that's music or painting or woodworking or cooking, any of these things, the act puts you into this state of flow where time doesn't exist and where nothing else seems to matter. And in that state, you are processing things in your head and in your brain in a way that talking about it doesn't work. So for me, these three things together are the magic. It's music, it's therapy, it's art, and then of course there's all kinds of other stuff in my toolbox too. Exercise, one of the best things you can do for your mental health. Yoga and meditation, something I practice very regularly and keeps me leveled. Spending time in nature, reading books, journaling, all of this stuff. Prayer, and you know, it's I'm doing better. I feel a lot better than I did 10 years ago. I'm not going to tell you I still don't have bad days. I still don't have thoughts of suicide, but they're less frequent, they're less intense, and my ability to feel the good stuff has increased dramatically. And that was one of the biggest things for me. I couldn't feel the good stuff before because I was stuck in that trauma. I was stuck in that grief. And you've heard this. Everybody's heard the saying, seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. Well, for me, it was seeing the world through glasses that had a perpetual dark shade on them, right? That painted this level of anger and cynicism. And I'll always be a cynic somewhere a little bit. I got to keep that edge, but I'm a much happier guy than I used to be, and I can feel the good stuff now. So that's a tremendous difference. I have babbled on long enough. I can talk forever, but I want to give you guys some time for questions. Can we do some questions, Tony?
Absolutely. You guys, if you have questions or comments, raise your hand so I can unmute you. Please, please feel free. William, you've been unmuted. You can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Dennis. When you have those dark days, which of the arts do you run to first?
Thanks for the question, William. It's a great one, and for me, part of the process has been learning to trust my gut. So it's an intuitive decision, and I'm trying to hone that skill, listening to my body, listening to my gut. If that's telling me to pick up a paintbrush or a set of markers or my guitar or just a pencil to start doodling, it's about listening to yourself and discovering what you need. Like, I'll relate it to food. Sometimes you just get a craving for a cheeseburger. And I don't know. I'm a guy that believes if my body is telling me that I need to have a cheeseburger right now, I am going to have a cheeseburger. So I feel the same thing with the coping skills. I listen to what my body's telling me.
Thanks. That's a powerful message.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? Raise your hand so I can unmute. Massey, you've been unmuted. As you can go ahead.
All right, Dennis, first of all, I would like to say thank you for sharing your powerful message with us. It speaks volume with dealing with the loss, and I'm grateful that you're giving options, giving us different methods of dealing with, instead of running from it. At some point in time, we do have to face it. I don't have a particular question. I just wanted to just share that with you, that I do appreciate you so much for sharing that with us, and your song was so powerful. And to hear about where you came from to where you're at now, and I still, the message is still, strong in your song. So I really appreciate that you having the courage to share this with so many others. And just thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's an honor. Thank you.
Mary, you've been allowed to speak. Go ahead.
My question is, when you have when you know somebody who has just recently attempted suicide, how do you approach them? I mean, is there some fine line? I feel like there's some fine line you walk between being aware that they're going through a crisis at the moment, but also at what point do you have that sense of normalcy in your conversations with them too? And I'm just wondering about that. And then also, for those of us who popped in just a tad bit late because we were having trouble logging in, I missed the song. Is there a way that we could hear the song?
Yes, I can certainly do the song again. I plan to share another song at the end. Also, I think, Tony, you are recording this.
I am
so
indeed.
maybe you can use the recording to see the first song,
Yeah.
so that we have enough time for the second one. But
Absolutely.
Mary, thank you very much for an excellent question. It is a fine line and it's a delicate dance, and my best advice is to learn how to gauge that person's temperature, and I think the best way to do that is just having a frank discussion. And you be honest about your feelings around what happened. I guess if I got to put myself in your shoes without knowing anything else about the scenario, if it were one of my friends, I would say, listen, I know you probably don't want to talk about it very often, but I want you to know that I'm here for you if you ever do want to talk about it. I'm not afraid to have these conversations with you. I love you and I want to support you, but I need your help in telling me how best to do that. Honesty is always the best policy, I think. I'm not a clinician. I'm talking from lived experience. I've never had an actual suicide attempt myself, just many pretty serious thoughts over the years. And for me, what's always been helpful was anybody who was willing to listen to me when I needed to vent that, instead of saying, glossing over it, pretending like it wasn't there, or it's finally a term. It wasn't a term 10 years ago, but toxic positivity, when you're stuck in that dark place, is just the worst thing in the world. Tomorrow's another day, stuff like that. Nobody dealing with a suicidal depression wants to hear stuff like that. I shouldn't speak for everybody. As somebody who has dealt repeatedly with suicidal depression, that stuff always pissed me off. I'm sorry if I'm using a little PG-13 language here. I hope that's okay.
You're fine, Dennis. I do want to say, I really appreciate you sharing that it is okay and not to think that something's wrong. I'm crazy. If you have these thoughts, it is okay to have them and talk about, okay, well, what are we going to do? Where do we go from here? Why are you, feeling this way? As opposed to thinking something's wrong that you cannot share, so that you can have the conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. And I'm going to elaborate that on just for a second here. So my friend Jean, my mentor, who I talked about earlier, I like to bring another piece of her wisdom into this. So the question that I get most often is, why would somebody think about suicide? Why do people think about suicide? Of course, that's a very complicated answer. And again, I'm not a clinician, so I can't speak at it from that point of view. But I can tell you, in my experience and everything that I have learned over the last 15 years doing this, is that thoughts of suicide happen when somebody's pressure, problems, and pain outweigh their ability to deal with that. You know, I'll always go back to music. Listen to Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie, and that answers the question as to why people think about suicide. Is there some kind of gene that we haven't found yet that predisposes you to thoughts? Maybe. People deal with stress and pressure differently, but some people sometimes just reach that point. It's like a balloon. You know, the balloon is you, and the air you're blowing into it is the pressure and stress from life. And unless you have a way to vent that, to release it, someday that balloon's going to explode. So a simple method that Gene always talked about was exploring with someone this pressure, problems, and pain, or doing it yourself. You can have a daily check-in with yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are my pressure, problems, and pain? What can I do to reduce any of those? Because if they're all at a 10 and you can reduce one of them to a 5, those thoughts of suicide will dissipate. And oftentimes that's just enough to start to see some other options or to see the forest for the trees. So pressure, problems, and pain, a daily check-in. Where am I at? It's a way to help a friend too. What's going on in your life? Can you rate this on a scale of 1 to 10? Can we explore together how to reduce some of that?
We got another hand raised here. Who's raising their hand? Okay, Amy, go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering, did you use medication also to help you cope with everything?
Hi, Amy. Thank you for the question. I sure did. And that's actually a fairly recent development. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago that I was prescribed Zoloft for PTSD. I had lifelong depression and anxiety, and the medication made a tremendous difference. Everything else helps as well, and I'm a big believer that one doesn't work without the other when you're talking about therapy and medication. Like a lot of people, I had my own internal stigma about it. I wanted to believe I could do it without medication, you know, a healthy, I was, you know, everybody is, I don't even know how to say it, big pharma, right? What are they doing? But, you know, with many years of reluctance, I finally gave it a shot because I had gotten to a point where, like, man, I can't keep living like this. I've tried everything else, and it's okay. These things have helped to a degree, but I think I need it to be better. And it was a friend who was also prescribed Zoloft for anxiety and depression. The conversation that the two of us had, I reached out to her. I said, hey, how's it going? Is everything all, did this work for you? I think I might need it. And so those little conversations, little by little, I think help reduce stigma. I have no idea if I'm going to be on that for the rest of my life, if something's going to change, but as long as it's working, as long as it's helping, then yeah, I am, and I'm an advocate for it. But I'm also an advocate for one doesn't work without the other.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, I wanted to ask you, when you were having your thoughts of suicide, did your mom or was there an adult that recognized signs, signals, and tried to approach and share anything with you regarding it?
No. So, relationship with my mother is extremely complicated and has been estranged for some years. Um, I I can only speculate that she's also dealing with some mental health stuff that she hasn't confronted yet. But for me, that relationship became toxic and um, interfered with my ability to heal. Uh, if you knew me back then and you heard the songs and you had no idea that I was suicidal, you were missing some pretty big clues. But nobody ever asked about it, um, except for Jean, the lady who was running that group. Of course, she knew, and she was the very first person that I was able to verbalize the words out loud. Yes, I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about suicide. I think about it frequently. And guys, just saying those words out loud sometimes can be enough relief to start looking for other ways to get help.
Are there any signs that we can kind of look at to see if we can identify that behavior or that thought process in our children, our students?
Yeah, there are signs. The big ones are talking about it, joking about it,
Oh,
threatening to do it. That's the biggest one. Um, it'll become it'll become more frequent. So people drop hints. Um, Isolation, withdrawal, substance abuse, alcohol abuse. All of these things could indicate a person in crisis. But what I like to say here is you're looking for a change in that person's personality,
mhm.
a major shift. And that's probably the biggest warning sign. A caveat is people that are actively suicidal, a large number of them are very good at hiding it because they don't want you to know. Um, Gene's term was masters of deception because at these meetings, you would always hear the same thing. They were the happiest person in the world. They were the life of the party. They were creative. They were talented. Everybody loved them. They had so many friends. It's not the person off in the corner with their face buried in their hands. It's the person you least expect time and time and time again.
Wow. Heather is asking the question about art therapy resources. Do you have any suggestions?
I absolutely do. I am copying a link into the chat right now. This is where I got started. ExpressiveArtWorkshops.com. She's got all kinds of courses that you can take online in your own time, and it's a life changer. You can also learn how to do, expressive art workshops with some of your teens. She's got a booklet on that too, and it's a game changer, guys. It really is.
Got a hand raised here. Okay, Heather, go ahead.
I just didn't hear that what was that again? The link, I didn't see the link in the chat. I was the one that asked about the art therapy resources. What did you say?
ExpressiveArtWorkshops.com.
Okay.
Did that show up, Tony, in the chat?
It did, but it was sent just to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll repaste it and send it to everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions, you guys, comments? And I just repasted the link for the art therapy and send it out. So make sure you guys click on it. It'll take you straight to the page and you can get the resources.
All right. I'm gonna, if it's all right, Tony, I'll close us out with a song.
Absolutely.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, somebody asked me if I would ever consider changing the end of the song that I played at the beginning. And I said, nope, that song is written. That's where I was at the time. And it's going to stay. But I wrote a new song. So I told you all about the worst day of my life earlier. When I found out about my dad, I'll tell you about the best day of my life now, the day my daughter Harper was born. And I wrote this song for her. But after I wrote it, and I sat with it for a little while, and I played it a few times, I thought this is the antidote to the song No Resolve, the one that I played at the beginning. It's what I would have wanted to hear from my father, but it's also what I, as a 45-year-old man, would tell my 14-year-old self at that time. You're gonna lose hope. You're gonna face fear. You're gonna get angry. You're gonna shed tears. You're gonna face loss. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna question the point and get lost in the haze. But you'll be okay someday. You've made it through your worst days. You'll be okay someday, don't you know? You'll see the sun rise and you'll watch it set. And if you're lucky, you won't miss it. You'll see fields of green. You'll swim the ocean blue. You'll watch the leaves change colors. You'll feel the wind shift you. And when this life gets lonely, know you're not the only one who feels just like that sometimes. You'll make lots of friends, and some will disappear. Don't let your heart grow cold when change is here. And through all of this, know that I'm with you. I'm in your heart and by your side too. And when this life gets lonely, know you're not the only one who feels just like that sometimes. You'll be okay someday. You've made it through your worst day. You'll be okay someday, don't you know? Thank you guys for being here today, for listening.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was excellent. Thank you guys for joining. If you don't have any more comments, questions, we will bring this to a close. Got a lot of thank yous.
Thank you guys. I appreciate that.
Got a lot of hearts. Got a lot of love, Dennis.
I feel it. Thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. Again, thank you so much. That was beautiful. It was a beautiful presentation. Greatly appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tony. I can hang on if you want to chat after it's over, or are you closing out with these guys?
I was gonna close out, but if
It's
you
up to you.
guys want to hang out and talk. No hands raised, no hands raised. All right then.
Okay.
All right, Dennis, I'll be in touch. I want to do this again.
I appreciate it. That sounds great. Anytime, Tony. Thank you.
Good deal, good deal. Thank you guys. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.